parking, but it'll be on TV for those who can't make that. We're happy to be here, joined by our UNF interim president, Angela Falconetti. We also have the founder of Blessed Mother Family Foundation, Megan Garcia, and then we have the chief marketing officer for the center, the Centner Wellness and Spa, Amy Villela McBride, and they're going to have some things to say as well. So today was the culmination of Florida, the legislature's 60-day legislative session. And so they adjourned earlier this afternoon, sine die, and there's a lot of things that were done that were very productive, and I know you're going to hear Angela's going to talk about one of the particular pieces of legislation. So we did a number of things, and you had some great members, including some of your members here, like Senator Clay Yarborough, did amazing stuff. Dean Black did. We'll talk a little bit about that. We also had some other reps from around the state. You had Jenna Persons Malika did some really good legislation. You also had in the Senate, Senator Albritton did a really good job of managing the process. A lot of good stuff that were done. So some of the things, the one thing I tell people is like, I ran first time, said I was going to do, did it. Ran the second time, said I was going to do a lot more, and did even more, and did all that. So I've converted on everything I've ever promised people we would do, but there's always more meat on the bone, so it's like you're playing with house money. You want to try to continue to put more wins on the board, and that's basically been my philosophy. So nobody has done more in the country on election integrity than the free state of Florida, and we've been doing that for years. We were the first state to ban ballot harvesting, or certainly one of the first states to do that. We banned Zuckerbucks. Remember the Zuckerbucks from 2020? We made sure that we were able to prosecute people that committed voter fraud. We now have a unit in state government that does it, because some of these local prosecutors wouldn't prosecute voter fraud. So you've had a number of those cases go up, and then actually removing officials, like the Palm Beach supervisor, the Broward supervisor that were there before I became governor, and so all that's gotten a lot better, and we're really the envy of the nation. You look at California. Something tells me when Ronald Reagan was governor of California, just merely mentioning the name of the state would not have elicited the laughter and eye rolling, but it's because we just expect, what are they doing next, right? Well, when they do these elections, you go and, first of all, they send mail ballots out to everyone on the list, so you could be in like some condo in Redondo Beach, and you get like 6 ballots from everyone that used to rent it before you, and nobody knows what the hell's going on. People are ballot harvesting. They have these drop boxes. It's the Wild West. Unions are heavily involved, public unions, like SCIU, heavily involved in it. And so you do it, and then you have an election, and then they count some of the votes, and then they keep counting votes day after the election, and the next day, and the next day, and the next week, and then 2 weeks later, and you have one candidate winning on election night, and then 2-3 weeks later, another candidate ends up winning. And it's like, what the hell is going on here? So notice in Florida, we did, I don't know how many votes were in the last presidential election, probably 10, 12, 13 million votes. You had the results within 2 hours of the polls closing. Why can't every state do what Florida does? So we're proud of that, but we also always want to do better. Now, we've always had voter ID in Florida since I've been governor, and I think it's something that's really important. But we also knew there's ways you can do even better. So we were able to see passed in the legislature the Florida version of the Save America Act. And that's going to fortify our already robust protections. Most of the stuff in Save America at the federal level, we've already done in Florida. Some of the stuff has nothing to do with voting, like not allowing men and women's sports. We did that like 5 or 6 years ago in Florida, banning the mutilation of minors with the gender surgeries. We banned that years ago. But some of the stuff on fortifying ID in this Save America Act, they're making sure that you have valid ID, and that does not include a student ID. And I always wanted to deal with these students. They wouldn't do it in the Senate many years ago, but think about it. If you're from Ohio and you're going to University of North Florida, you get a student ID. That doesn't tell you whether you're supposed to be voting there or not. That's not, you should have, obviously, to get into a school, you must have some type of photo ID. And if you're a Florida resident, then fine, you're eligible to register to vote and to do that. But the notion that these college campuses should have people with student IDs that are not actually Florida residents being able to vote, that's not the way you run a credible election. So I was really glad to see that. I thought that was a little bit of a loophole than we should have had before. And this helps ensure our Constitution in Florida is enforced, which says, among other things, only U.S. citizens are eligible to vote in the state of Florida. Another piece of legislation that we worked very hard is the prohibition of things like Sharia law being imposed in different communities. Using courts, using foreign law, but also making sure that we have a structure for our law enforcement to be able to designate groups like the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations. It's very important that they don't get benefits. Organizations affiliated with them are not eligible for state benefits, and so this provides an important structure that we're going to be able to use to make sure that the people of Florida are protected. And let's just be honest about what's going on in the world right now. You had 4 years of the border being completely open. Do you think Iran just failed to take advantage of that, knowing they could get anyone in here they wanted? No. So there's threats in this country right now, and we need to make sure, particularly when you're talking about militant Islamic terrorist organizations, that we are calling that what it is, and that we're making sure that not just our law enforcement, but all of our institutions are responding appropriately to be able to protect the people of this state. So I was really happy to see that the legislature stepped up and did that. And the other thing that they did was, we've done all this stuff on education. Everything we've done has been opposed by the school unions because they're very left ideologically. And honestly, they have a right to be that, but I think the problem is, if you look, most teachers don't even sign up to be a part of these school unions anymore. They don't have to pay dues. There's no mandatory dues in Florida. We made sure that there's no deductions. You want to write a check and do it, you can. Most teachers have chosen not to. But yet these unions somehow are negotiating all this stuff on behalf of teachers that they don't even represent. And it got to the point where I instituted about 5 years ago a provision of the budget where the money goes to school districts and can only be used to increase teacher salaries. Because people say, pay teachers more, you send money down to the school districts, and then they spend it on other things. So we said, here's money, and this year is $1.38 billion. You can only use it for teacher pay. And some districts have done a really good job with that, and some of the teachers are thankful. Other districts, you literally have the school union stalling negotiations, not giving that money to the teachers because they're trying to leverage that for other union priorities. That was not why we did that money. We did the money to be able to get in the teacher pocket. So now, with the reform bill that was passed in the legislature by John Martin, Senator, and Jenna Persons Malika in the House, they're going to be able to be held accountable. And if they don't have enough people signing up to join these school unions, then they get decertified, and they shouldn't be able to bargain on behalf of people that don't want their position. We also, the legislature, really, really good. I think this is the first in the country, and I've been talking about this for months now, is protecting Florida, particularly our ratepayers, from having their utilities increase because of hyperscale data centers. Now, there aren't any hyperscale that have been built in Florida. I mean, there are smaller ones that have come over the years, but you know, they have some, like in Louisiana, Meta's building one the size of Manhattan and putting it in Louisiana. Well, how much power is that going to take? So these hyperscale, they take as much power as a city of 500,000 people. Well, you know, you're only producing so much power. You have a certain amount of demand. If you dramatically increase demand, what's going to happen to rates? They are going to go up unless you have protection. So what I said is, you should not have any money that, or any rate increase or any more on the ratepayer as a result of these. We're not going to let some company come in and make you pay. So we're the first state in the country to protect ratepayers against a hyperscale data center. Again, I don't know that they're even going to be doing it in Florida, but what we can't have is seeing people's rates go up because there's just not enough power to go around. You know, it's also the case, hopefully we don't have another hurricane in the near future, but we're always prepared for that. You know, what do you think would happen? Well, with me, maybe not, but like, you know, if you have a hurricane and the data center wants the power before the residences, I mean, you know, what would that message send if someone gave it to the data center before? So I think we've got some unique issues in Florida, and that bill is really the first in the country, and it protects that. And even the president has said they got to pay their own way. There should not be any subsidization, and they got to make sure that they're doing that. That's exactly what this bill does. Now, it's interesting. These companies went up and they signed the pledge or whatever. They were not happy to see this bill, though, which is basically just doing what the pledge said, because I think that they figured one way or another you could eventually offload the cost. Not in the state of Florida. We're going to protect our residences and our small businesses on that. They also passed something that I've called for many months now, major animal welfare legislation, particularly with puppies, making sure that these puppy mills are not abusing these dogs, a whole host of things. And unfortunately, you know, we've got a lot of problems in Florida with some of these people and how they're treating these dogs. We've done a lot over the years. We're proud of what we've done, but we needed to do more, and the legislature delivered, so we'll make sure that that gets signed into law as soon as possible. We also had the bill that was really done by the Jacksonville reps, Senator Yarborough and Representative Black, the ban on DEI in local governments. We don't do it in the state. We were the first state in the country to ban it at the universities. We don't do it in state government, but local governments are doing it. And honestly, it's discriminatory and it's a waste of money when they're doing it. I'd rather you guys have the property tax reform than have them spend money on some of these things, but it's just not right, it's not good policy, so they address that, and that's going to be really, really exciting. And then a ban throughout the state of Florida, particularly with respect to local government, but as well as state government, no carbon taxes in the state of Florida, so that's a good one. So that's great. I really appreciate it. I commend everyone that's been involved in that. It's exciting to see we continue to put points on the board, even though we could just sit back and just say, hey, look at us in Florida. We've done more than any other state. It's true, but we're doing more. I also have said from the very beginning, the thing that we need to get on the ballot is the property tax for homestead residents to be excluded from that. It's something that I did not want to push in the regular session. The Senate President agreed that it wasn't something, there's all these different issues floating around. We want to make sure that we can look at this very clear-eyed, but I know the voters want to see relief. The voters want to be able to vote for this on the ballot, and so we'll be working with them very shortly. People say, oh, why is he putting this out? Well, because I knew we weren't going to do it now. Why would I put something out if it's not going to be done? Trust me, we're working on the exact procedure, but you're going to have something that's going to be really transformative, and you're going to be something that is going to, I think, makes a difference for millions of people in this state. Think about this. When I became governor 2019, and property taxes are local. We don't do it at the state level. It's administered locally, levied locally, spent locally. Local governments in Florida took in $32 billion in property tax revenue. Today it's $60 billion. 7 years later, they've gone from 32 to 60 billion. So, and of that, only 30% is homestead Florida resident property tax. The rest is second homes, Airbnbs, investment. You got some rich guy from Brazil buying a home in Coconut Grove, he pays tax, commercial, all that other. So that's the vast majority of property tax. So we're focusing on you as a Florida resident. You homestead your, it's a primary residence deal, you homestead it. You don't have to seek homestead, I think most people do. You do it, and you have some benefits under law now. It keeps it from going up as much, but that's not good enough. And you could absolutely give people, that exclusion, especially if we don't do anything. In 5 years, they're going to take in $83 billion. So it'd be a 15-year run from 32 to 83 billion. Now, did we not? They'll say, "Oh, you can't fund anything if you give property tax relief." Did we not have police and fire in 2019? Did we not have schools? Seriously, it was $32 billion. Okay, inflation, yeah, it's happened. Population growth, it's happened. Throw in a couple percent just for kicks on a Saturday night. Fine, do that. That doesn't get you to 60 billion. That would be like 45, 46, 47 billion, which, oh, by the way, that delta is basically what we would look at for 98% of primary homeowners. And so don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. It's a choice. They can continue to tax you excessively or not. And you have a voice in this matter, and it's through a proposal on the ballot and then being able to vote on it in November. And so that's going to be something that is going to get hot and heavy very quickly. It was not something that we anticipated in the regular session. I said that from the beginning. So don't think because they sine die that somehow we're not doing it. We've only just begun on this, and ultimately you're going to have an opportunity in November to be able to weigh in on it. We'll also be doing the redistricting, as I mentioned, coming in there. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that the legislature sine die without doing the only one thing that they're required to do, which is produce a budget. And it is what it is. These guys, they go through the House and Senate. I don't really have a formal role in it. They will present the budget to me, and then I have a line item veto. I sign the budget veto, whatever I do, and then we kind of go from there. But we are going to have to get this done for the people of Florida. I've spoken with Ben Albritton, the president of the Florida Senate. He's of the mind, as I am, that this is not something that should be drug out. This is something they just need to get it done. It's not like, this isn't rocket science at this point. You just look what we've done for 7 years and cut and paste, and you're probably in a pretty good spot. So we are going to be doing a special session on the budget. We'll come up with the exact dates and times on that, but it's not going to be something that is going to drag out into June, or certainly if I have anything to say with it, we're not going to do it. It needs to get done, and I think most people expect that. And I think a lot of the members, this is an election year, I think they want to go back in their districts. They want to talk about some of the things that they accomplished. They want to highlight some of the things they were able to accomplish in the budget, all these different things in advance of their elections, and I want them to have the time to do that. But you got to get the job done first, and so they weren't able to do that. And I know that there's some back and forth on there here. All I can tell you is some of the things that were different between the chambers. There was a proposal by the House to reduce our funding for Everglades restoration by 2/3. I want to tell you that dog won't hunt. Everglades restoration is the most significant environmental restoration project in American history. And we have done it better than anyone thought was possible. We've done it so well that we now have a partner in Washington with the Trump administration, and they not only are delegating projects to us and funding it so we can get it done quicker, they want to come in and do even more than they're doing. So the momentum on this is absolutely incredible. Every member of both houses, Republican and Democrat, has supported our efforts for years. There is no reason to all of a sudden, when we're at the peak momentum when we're very close to finally finishing it, that you would reduce that by 2/3. And so I know our partners in the Senate are very supportive of continuing the mission, continuing the momentum on Everglades restoration. And the thing is, yeah, you can do a budget and you can cut it by 2/3. I would just call you back in for a special session to do the Everglades stuff. I mean, we have to do it. It's important. All these members ran on this and have talked about all the great work we've done. Look, up in Northeast Florida, not as sensitive about Everglades, but we've done a lot on Springs. We've done a lot on St. John's. We've put a lot of money into these things because we understand that Florida, physical Florida, and what we have is very important to the vitality of the state. And we have a responsibility to leave it to God better than we found it. So we'll continue to push for that. The other, I think, point of contention, as I understand, we pioneered in Florida, not just me, working with the legislature over the years, an accelerated debt repayment program. So if you take all the debt that the state's accumulated over its 181-year history, just since I've been governor, we've retired more than 50% of it. A lot of that has been retired early. When you do that, we've got great guys that do this, and they go in and they can get these bonds, usually at a discount on the open market. They retire the bond, so you save on principal, but then you save on interest, because you don't have to pay interest anymore. And so we've saved over $1 billion just on interest as we're reducing Florida's debt, and we now have the lowest per capita debt, in the country. And so this has been something that has been very significant for our fiscal. And the rainy day fund, we've almost quadrupled that since I've been governor. So our rainy day fund, current year's maxed out. I think they got to put a little bit more in because the limit goes up every year. So they're doing that, which is great. But we're built for the long haul with low debt, good reserves, and overall a very manageable budget. So I think the debt reduction is important. I know Senator Albritton's been a champion for that. We should continue the momentum. It's a big success story. People are glad to see that their state is taking care of business. Imagine if like California or New York or Illinois tried that, or the federal government, we'd be in much better shape if they mimic what Florida has done on that. We don't want to be more like them. We want to make sure we keep going the way we're going. Another point of contention, I think, is the Schools of Hope, which was passed last year. It's a program to go in the worst areas of Florida that people have written off. Some of it's inner city, and bring in a new operator who has a history of doing these schools and trying to give some of these kids, mostly very poor kids, a chance. And they have a great record in doing this type of program. It was passed in the House last year. Senate was tough to get it through. They got it through. And so now we have people that are coming. It's going to be like Miami for a lot of, maybe eventually Jacksonville. Like the media's acted like all the schools are going to be taken. Now it'll be a handful in each jurisdiction at best in terms of each major city, probably Jacksonville, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, maybe Tampa. I don't think probably much beyond that, and maybe only one school or two in each one. I don't know what it'll be, but if it works and parents want it, then that's what we've got to be doing. So I was glad to see that the Senate wants to continue that. We've got a lot of people that are excited about it. For whatever reason, the House didn't put any money into it, even though we passed it last year. Can't turn back. I mean, when you go for reform, you got to go all whole hog. So I'm very supportive of making sure we're funding Schools of Hope. We also have something in Florida that we resuscitated years ago called our Florida State Guard. And you remember the reason that we did that is because we have a National Guard and they do a great job, but ultimately the National Guard answers to Washington, D.C. And what happened was, this was when they were trying to impose vax mandates for mRNA COVID shots. I had a policy that there would be no mandates in the state of Florida, not just for... And so, I told the commanding general, I said, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it. But here's the thing, in the feds, they backed down on that. They didn't push it. We thought they were, they didn't. But if they really had pushed it, they probably had the authority to override based on history. I'm sometimes people will say, oh, I don't want our Florida Guard to be, deployed to the Middle East or this or that. Well, I don't either, but understand, the President of the United States and the federal government, they can mobilize our National Guard and they can send them. It's not the governor's responsibility or power to facilitate, or you certainly can't stop it. So ultimately, the National Guard serves an important function for the state, but administratively, they answer to the federal government when the federal government wants to do the activation. And so having a state guard that we used to have, we resuscitated it, it can serve those same functions, but doesn't answer to Washington, D.C. at all. And look, now we work well with the Trump administration, didn't work as well with the Biden administration, but political swings happen. You'll have this and that, and I think it's important for the state to make sure that we have an ability to respond. They've responded to hurricanes, they've helped with our enforcement of illegal immigration. A lot of things that we've done has done that. Those people will not get mobilized and sent in foreign countries. They cannot be controlled by the federal government with administrative mandates or anything. They work for you and the people of Florida, and they answer to you. And it's been very, very successful. So appreciate we've had huge support in the legislature over the years on that, and the Senate is continuing to support it. The House wants to end the Florida State Guard. That's not what they ran on, and a lot of their members have been supportive over the years. So we want to make sure that we can continue to be able to have Floridians be served in difficult circumstances without having Washington, D.C. have the last say. And again, do I think there's going to be a problem now with the current administration? Probably not. Were there potential problems in the previous administration? Yeah, a lot. And the vax was just one of them. There's a lot more other than that. So those are some of the things that I think I've heard about, maybe some separation. There's also the issue of the Trump administration has sent a bunch of money to the states, including Florida, to expand rural health care. We are in some respects a very urban state because we've got a number of city centers. You've got Jacksonville's 1 million people, you've got Tampa Bay, all these, but we've got a lot of rural. You drive west from here on I-10, you see a lot of rural. You go down in the heartland of Florida, a lot of rural. So probably 30 of our 67 counties would be considered rural, and this would be big time support for them. So we want to make sure that money is green lit so that we can get that out to start helping people. So I think they're going to be able to resolve all those things, but then we need to do it very quickly, and we need to make sure that the people of Florida are having their needs met. And the overall budget, I think, is very similar to what we've been doing the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, you in Florida, even though we've done huge things, you basically have a budget that's been stable. I mean, it's maybe within a little bit here or there, but our budget in Florida, with 23.5 million people probably, New York has 19.5. We have millions more people than they do. Our budget is less than half of the state of New York's budget. Our spending per capita is either the lowest or second lowest in the entire United States, depending on how you calculate it. And we have the lowest number of state government employees per capita in the United States of America. And so we have a very lean budget. We've paid down debt. We've got very good and generous budget reserves, including the rainy day fund. But yet we've done so many transformational things, from education, what we've done with universities, what we've done with environmental restoration, what we've done with the accelerating infrastructure and doing that in a really, really big way. So this has all been done for things that benefit the state as a whole. I think we've had great teamwork and great support over the years from members of the legislature. And incidentally, on a lot of this stuff, honestly, both parties have supported what we've done on Everglades. Both of them have supported what we've done on infrastructure. Now, some of the liberals aren't going to support banning DEI. Yeah, I get that. They're not going to support banning carbon taxes. They want a carbon tax. You trust me, they do. They didn't. Some of them didn't support protecting you against the data center cost increases, which was very curious. And obviously, they weren't supportive of our terror designation and making sure we don't have. How is it this guy that shoots up Old Dominion first of all, why was he allowed to come to this country to begin with? So he comes, he becomes a naturalized citizen, and then he gets convicted of material support to terrorism. And then he gets out early, and for me, it's like, okay, you're naturalized and you're convicted of material support to terrorism. Yeah, you serve your time, you shouldn't be let out early, but you should be denaturalized and deported when that happens. Not released to the American society. And you get back to terrorism. So sometimes it's just like, what are we doing with who we're letting? I know Biden let a lot of people in, but it's like you look over the last 25 years, some of these people are coming in. Some of them are coming in legally, but they hate this country. And you should never let anyone immigrate here who hates this country or who hates our people. So I'm excited. I look forward to being able to sign some of these great bills. I know that the legislature will work and knock out the budget, just not going to be on time, but hopefully, relatively soon we'll be working on that. I have consulted with Senator Albritton on the appropriate dates for that, and we'll get that done. And then we've got property tax, you've got the redistricting, and who knows, you may pull more rabbits out of your hat. Okay, Angela, do you want to come up?
Well, it's great to be with our governor right here in the remarkable city of Jacksonville, Florida. My hometown. Great to be with each and every one of you today. So thank you, Governor, for what you do for our great state. I'm also honored to represent the University of North Florida as interim president, and I want to take a moment to thank not only our chancellor, our commissioner of education, the board of governors, our board of trustees, our faculty, our staff, and definitely last but not least, this is why we're in the business, our students, for ensuring the success of the student experience at the university. I'm here today, though, as the governor mentioned, to discuss Senate Bill 1296, which enhances transparency for unions, that represents Florida's hardworking teachers, professors, and graduate assistants. However, I would like to take another moment to congratulate you, Governor, on dedicating, this is pretty remarkable, nearly $6 billion to increase the pay of Florida's K-12 teachers. Thank you. So as the interim president of the University of North Florida, we and I value our faculty, of which I'm an extension as a double alumna of UNF. Senate Bill 1296 serves to ensure that the voices of faculty are heard through bargaining units that advocate on their behalf. Currently, it is possible for a union to receive exclusive bargaining authority with a slim fraction of support. For example, at FAMU, 3 out of 202 graduate assistants voted to recertify the union. At USF, 41 out of 2,169 employees voted for the union. Senate Bill 1296 requires unions that maintain bargaining authority do so only with the support of the majority of the employees represented by the respective union. So in summary, the Senate Bill 1296 ensures that organizations bargaining on behalf of Florida's hardworking teachers, professors, and graduate assistants represent the majority of the dedicated educators of our great state of Florida. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. This is a tremendous achievement for our state.
I have some people will tell me, like, because we've done major reforms on a number of things involving education, including, this isn't the first bill for school unions either, and they say, well, just get rid of them. Why don't you just get rid of them? And I think the reason that they cite is, it's one thing to, like, your private, the Teamsters, and you're bargaining with a company or whatever, because it's basically the company's got to pay workers, the workers want to get fair, whatever, you go, and look, sometimes it works out good, sometimes it causes, but it is what it is. The issue when you talk about teacher unions is you have the union negotiating with government on some level, and the union's job is to represent its members, not to represent the students, not to represent the families. So if there's a conflict between what would be good for a member of the union versus what would be good for the students and the families, not only is the union going to choose their members, honestly, they're duty bound to do it. So it creates, I think, a bad incentive to where, so for example, they would have an incentive to keep a bad teacher employed as long as possible, even if it hurts the students, because they got to protect their members, right? And so so people put that out, and look, I agree with that analysis, but the issue is, if you read Florida's Constitution, they wrote in the ability to have these types of teacher unions, and so if you guys don't like that, you have an opportunity to amend it, but working within the system as we have it, and as the Constitution is, clearly it's appropriate to make sure that this is representative of people that are actually voting for this thing. And it's sad that so you have that issue of, hey, they're representing these folks, but in schools, all these other people, they're really the ones that have the biggest stake in it, and no one's representing them. So you do have that. Then you just have something that's happened in more recent decades where these teacher unions have become so rabidly partisan. And you go look at the National Convention for the National Education Association, United Federation of Teachers. I mean, you think they're going to wheel out like a Che Guevara or something like that, or like it's like the Karl Marx. It is left of left. And here's the thing: you're free in this country to be that, but why would that be jammed into our school system? Right. That is not appropriate to be doing that. But that's really what the agenda is. Including even going to the point of denying the kids' right to be in school at all. You remember during COVID, I said every school's got to be open. I got a lot of flack for that, and the union sued me in Florida. And they were going to the courts and they were saying, we cannot have schools be open, and they were wrong about that. And they tried to act like it was going to be bad for kids. No, locking kids out of school is bad for them. They needed to be in. And so we were right on the science, right on the social consequences, the academic consequences, all that. And we beat them in the courts on that. But think about that. They were not interested in what was happening with the students, and they did that. They won't admit that they did that now, but that was really a low point in terms of how these things have operated. And then obviously they fought, delayed the pay increases for teachers because they're trying to leverage other priorities. There's just been a lot of stuff. Our education commissioner, Stasi Kamoutsis, he's very strong on calling this out when it happens. But the reality is that there's in the education context for K-12 in particular, I think there's really negative results under how these things have operated in America recent years. Florida has done more to empower parents and all that, but the reality is, what is that unit bargaining for, and are they looking out for the best interest of the people that have the biggest stake in the outcome of the education, the kids and the parents? And unfortunately, when you have 4 people can certify a union for hundreds, it's not necessarily working out that way. So this reform is going to ensure, if you're going to be someone that's going to be put in there, that you get the votes and you're represented. And look, if the people are voting for it and the union's going in a different direction than I like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Life's tough on that. But to just take 10 people out of like 1,000 and say they get to call the shots, that doesn't work. So thank you for doing that. I'm excited for that reform. Okay, Amy, come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Bilal McBride. Thank you so much, Governor DeSantis. Good to see you again. Everything we do. So on behalf of families across Florida and my organization, the Global Wellness Forum, we want to extend a sincere thanks to Governor DeSantis for all that he's done for our state, as well as President Ben Albritton and bill sponsors Senator Yarborough and Representative Holcomb. Across the country, Florida has become the national model for parental rights, religious liberty, and informed consent. Thanks to the bold leadership of Governor DeSantis, Florida has stood for a beacon for freedom and common sense legislation. Over the past several years, Nearly 2 million Americans have moved to Florida in search of that freedom. My family was one of them. In 2019, New York removed religious exemptions for school vaccines. Overnight, my own children and 26,000 other children lost their right to attend private and public school. We homeschooled for a few years before making the difficult decision to move to Florida, like many families who also have come here seeking for freedom. My husband and I left behind family, friends, our careers, and our pensions to move to a state that protects constitutional rights and allows us to raise our children as we see fit based on our beliefs and our values. We chose Florida. We chose Florida because Florida stands for freedom. Florida stands for parental rights, and Florida honors religious and conscious beliefs. SB 1756, the Medical Freedom Bill, reinforces these very same principles. The bill recently passed in the Senate, stalled in the House. So today we are here. Florida families want to see this bill pass. We would like the House to advance the bill. Speaker Perez and Florida lawmakers, it was time to put politics aside and put families and freedom first and advance this bill. This is common sense legislation, and it strengthens informed consent so parents can have an honest discussion with healthcare practitioners. They learn the safety and the risks of vaccines before they are administered to their child. It establishes a conscience-based exemption for school vaccine requirements so parents can make decisions consistent with their beliefs. And the bill also expands access to ivermectin, available behind the counter with consultation from a pharmacist, giving patients access to safe and affordable treatments. The Medical Freedom Bill also ensures that mRNA-based vaccines can never be mandated in Florida. And it reinforces that doctors should treat patients based on what's best for their health, not based on pharmaceutical incentives or any type of financial kickbacks. Medicine is not one size fits all. Individual medical history, your genetic factors, possible contraindications, and your personal risks and beliefs all matter. Parents, not the government, are best positioned to make these healthcare decisions for their family. Parents simply want the freedom to make thoughtful medical decisions without government overreach. And this bill, the Medical Freedom Bill, aligns with the Make America Healthy Again agenda set forth by President Trump and carried forth by Secretary Kennedy. And across the country right now, there are 17 bills filed this session that are similar or that seek to end vaccine mandates altogether. This is not a fringe belief. There was a recent national poll conducted by John Zogby Strategies that found strong bipartisan support for medical freedom policies. Nearly 88% of voters support the right to refuse medical treatments, including vaccines. More than 90% support informed consent. Parents simply want to know, are there risks involved before they give their children medicine or vaccines? And 2/3 of voters support parents' right to refuse vaccines for their children. These findings in this national poll show broad public support for policies like SB 1756 to protect parental rights and patient choice. Medical freedom is not a partisan issue. It's a fundamental right. Florida has led the way in defending liberty. It is time to lead again. So I ask the Florida legislature, please put politics aside, put families and freedom first. Protect medical freedom in Florida. Thank
You know, it's interesting. I was not it wasn't that I was against. The medical stuff was not something that was really on my radar when I first became governor. And because we have religious exemption in Florida, but there were people that weren't happy, and so there was definitely static out there. But then COVID happened, and you saw them really try to shoehorn people into behaving ways. They wanted to mandate the MNRA shot. That was developed very quickly. There were a lot of people that didn't, and even people that already had COVID and had natural immunity, they wanted to force that. Now, we put the kibosh on that in Florida, and we stopped it. it just raises issues to like, okay, does a 6-month-old baby need to be jabbed with an mRNA shot? There was no evidence or data to suggest that that was something that was needed, but certainly no evidence that that should be forced on it. Are you kidding me? Like that was just, and yet that was what was going on, and it was really, really scary because they were using medical to basically circumscribe your rights to think for yourself and make decisions based on all the factors. Because, you know, first of all, COVID was a risk for certain folks based on health profiles and age. And so why can't a parent make an individual decision? So we started to have big conversations about this. They wanted to do, this would have happened if it wasn't for me, I can say this. Because Biden came in, they wanted to do COVID vaccine passports. So you would have to show that you had the mRNA shot in order to go to restaurants, movie theaters, all this other stuff. And I sniffed that was going to happen. The legislature did really good to say no, and not just for government vaccine passports. We're saying it's not appropriate in society as a whole. So if a business wants to do passports, no, I don't want to do passports. So we stopped that, and Fauci was trying to get Biden to do this, like an executive order for travel throughout the United States. And I think he wanted to do it, but this is based on reporting. Like, look, I don't know, but and one of his advisors at one point told Biden, they're like, well, like, you know, if you do this, the governor of Florida is going to fillet you 6 ways from Sunday. That would have happened, and obviously it didn't happen because it was indefensible. It's not something that you can do. So it just created, like, man. 2 years before COVID, I would not have viewed medical as a threat to people's freedom, but then that was being used, and some of it was opportunistic, some of it was just off the rails, but I really was like, okay, so we did ban the vaccine passports, ban the mandates, although the mandate ban was temporary. It was, we needed to reauthorize it, and then this bill makes it permanent. But without this bill being signed into law, you don't have permanent protection in Florida. Why would we not make it permanent and all this stuff? So you had all this stuff happen. So there's huge movement at the grassroots, and they were working. And last session in 2025, the Florida House passed similar bill, in some respects, maybe even a stronger bill than what eventually. Both have been good, but they did a really good thing, and it got to the Senate, and it just broke down. And the reality is look, the members that get elected there have different views. This is just a statement of fact. It's not even me criticizing, because no, you don't have to agree with me. We've got some of these Republican senators, like, if they could jab every baby as soon as they're born with mRNA, they would do it. Like, they really believe in the mandates. And so the bill had a very difficult time in the Senate last year. This year, you still had a lot of those hurdles, and Senator Albritton did a really good job of navigating this, getting it in a great shape to where we had something meaningful that could actually pass the Senate. And it was a really, really big deal, and you know how hard that is. I mean, it was not easy. You guys went and talked to some of them. You heard. So it was really, really significant, and it was the most significant, probably one of the most significant in the country for sure. And so we felt that once that happened, obviously the House had already passed it, so they could basically punch it in, and they chose not to do that. And I don't know why they chose not to do it, but it seems to me you're fumbling on the goal line here. Like, you're right on the goal line, punch it in for the touchdown and get it done. I know a lot of people in Florida really want to see these protections enacted into law. And so thank you for talking about your story. There's a lot of people just like you. And I think a lot of moms in particular, you know, they just want to know that they're doing this stuff eyes wide open, and then they're not being forced or coerced into doing something especially without having all the facts. And I think that's a normal maternal instinct to make sure, you know, you only get one shot at raising your kids, right? And so, you know, some people, they shouldn't ask any questions or whatever. Look, most parents, when they get all the information, most of them make very appropriate decisions, but each kid's different. So I want people to be able to have the ability to exercise rights and do that in a way, just like that polling says, where you're being able to make decisions based on informed consent. Okay, so we'll hopefully, I mean, I know you guys aren't quitting on this, and so it's not going to be the last word on it. Okay, now we have another speaker who's become a friend of mine, and she'll tell her story and make a few comments. Megan Garcia.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Garcia. I am the mother of Sewell Setzer III. Sewell died by suicide in 2024 after a prolonged engagement with an AI companion chatbot. He was only 14 years old. We live in Orlando, Florida, and Sewell was a good kid. He made good grades. He played sports. He loved to fish. Florida boy. He especially loved spending time with his family, his little brothers, and his grandparents, and his aunts, uncles, and cousins. Since his death, I've been traveling the country speaking to families to generate awareness, to warn them about these unique dangers. But I've also been speaking to legislators at both state and federal level to urge them to pass legislation that would implement guardrails on these type of companion chatbots for children, to protect children from these products. What we've seen is that our federal government has not passed legislation that protects kids online. But in our own state, here in Florida, we have acted to protect our children against social media. And once again, Florida is acting to protect kids against AI harms. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for putting forth the AI Bill of Rights that will protect Floridians, both adults and children alike, from AI harms. And thank you, members of the Senate who worked to pass this legislation. I urge every member of the House to vote to pass the AI Bill of Rights. Yesterday, I had the privilege of speaking to a high school in Lake Mary, Florida, to the parents of high schoolers. And I can tell you they were terrified, but they are paying attention. One mother asked me, what can I do to make sure Florida passes laws to protect our kids? And I told her, call your rep. The reality is our legislators have the power to act to protect the citizens of Florida. Your constituents who place their trust in you. Florida families need protection against AI harms, and Florida families deserve leaders who put them first, who don't back down or bow to pressure of big tech companies. Thank you again, Governor, for always standing with the families of Florida.
You know, I think until you actually talk to moms and hear these stories, a lot of people have no idea what the hell's going on with these chatbots. But you have chatbots that will sexually groom minors. They will goad them into committing suicide. There's a lawsuit now where this chatbot was just telling this kid, you got to be with me on the other side. Just do it. It's time. We want to be. We've got to unite and all this stuff. And the reality is there's a lot of hype about AI, and hopefully it does things like cure diseases and all this, and it might, right? I hope it does. But I know these companies, to make money, they have an incentive to try to get kids addicted to this technology because they want to sell subscriptions and they want to sell advertising, and that's just the reality. When you're creating products like this that are kind of a substitution for human interaction, the people that are creating those are human beings that have flaws, and all the flaws of human nature are going to be reflected in these products. And there's no other way you can do it. And in many respects, the flaws may be exacerbated by these artificial intelligence bots. Now, I'm somebody that said that we welcome technology that's going to enhance the human experience, but we shouldn't just sit idly by and let technology displace the human experience. We shouldn't we certainly shouldn't subsidize and try to hasten technologies that are going to undermine our ability to live our lives the way we want, to think for ourselves, and ultimately to be in control of our own destiny. And there's some people that say AI is just going to displace human control entirely, in addition to potentially displacing many, many jobs throughout the country. And so it's not an easy issue. It's obviously rapidly developing, but to be able to provide protections for moms and dads, for the kids, for you as a Floridian, so that they can't take your image and doctor it in a way that is going to cause you harm by having you say things that you never said, which obviously could be very detrimental depending on how they do that. Making sure they can't take your intellectual property, making sure that there's transparency, so that if you're interacting with AI, that you know that as a consumer, and that they can be held accountable accordingly. So those are all things. Notice, none of the things that we were trying to do with the bill the Senate passed, that wouldn't hurt any legitimate innovation. Not at all. What it would do is it would make it more difficult to do things like what happened with Megan's son. It would make it more difficult what happened with some other moms who've testified at some of our events. You had a chatbot telling one of our friend's sons that he should kill his parents. And how is this something that is good? But it's going to become more and more ingrained. I'll tell you, I'm glad I grew up in the 80s and 90s and we didn't have any of this crap. I'm telling you. But the reality is when you hear the stories, you know this is just wrong. This is wrong. And you got to do something about it. The federal government's not going to do anything about it. How do you think Congress is going to actually do? First of all, big tech won't let Congress do anything because they obviously want to monetize this as much as possible. So Florida, we've always stood up to do what's right. And the Senate, I mean, they passed it almost unanimously. I think it was like 36-4, something like that. Huge, huge vote. I don't know that there was interest in the House. I don't know if you were able to did you talk to any of the House members? Did they meet with you? Yeah, they weren't willing to meet. I think you gotta listen. When you get elected to represent people, you gotta listen to some of these things because this stuff is happening very quickly and there's gonna be more damage done if we don't get our act in gear. So I just wanna thank Megan for your activism. I know it's been very difficult to endure what you've endured, and especially under the circumstances that you've had to do. Not that it's easier in any other way, but I mean, it's just like really, really preventable to make sure that we just have healthy environments for our kids. And so keep at it. We're gonna get it done eventually, and it'll be good for, I think, people, not just in Florida, but it'll help lead the country. So I wanna thank everybody that's been involved. I know people have done a lot of great work, and you guys have had, Yarborough has been very good on the medical freedom. Amazing on the medical freedom. And so you've done a lot. I think that the folks up here in Northeast Florida, I think they did a lot of good stuff in this legislative session. So you guys have been represented well. I appreciate it. And we got to get the budget, get some of these other things done. But the momentum continues, and we're going to make sure that it does. Okay, any questions?
This is your final regular session. You've been through 8 of them at this point. How does this one rank compared to all the rest in terms of productivity and just your relationship with the legislature?
Well, look, I said at the beginning, I accomplished everything I told the voters I would do. So I have already done that. That doesn't mean there's not more to do. That's why I outlined all the things that we have done. But if you look at when I first came in, we came in with a big bang. We built huge momentum, and we were doing things that no one thought possible, leading the country, particularly in the COVID era. And then I got reelected by the biggest victory any Republican had ever had the governor's race, and we had so much. We just had so much momentum that that year where I was working with Paul Renner in Pasadena, you will never be able to match that. No one in the country has been able to match that, and no one's been able to match that in the history of Florida. So just that being said, the reality is we saw all these issues, we tackled them, we dealt with them. Now, things that come down the pipe, like the AI Bill of Rights, the data centers, what we've done on the Sharia, what we're doing on some of these issues, the local government, what they did with the so all these things are very, very good. So I'm proud of the guys that got a lot of this good stuff done. Now, this is still a work in progress because they haven't done the budget yet, and they need to do the budget, and I know we're gonna do the budget, and so, we'll see, but I'd anticipate us getting a good budget. Look, like I said, I mean, you can pass me a budget that reduces Everglades restoration funding by 2/3. I mean, you can do that. That's not gonna be the end of the story, and I'm not just gonna not do what we've been doing for 7 years. And all these people voted for this for 7 years, you know, it's like now all of a sudden, you know, you wanna try to stop just when we're at the maximum of the momentum, and we got the federal government all in with us, hand in hand, moving this faster than it's ever been fast, so, you know, it's fine. But I'm obviously gonna work very, very hard to make sure that the priorities that the people elected me to pursue are the priorities that we continue to do, and most of these members ran on those very same priorities.
Florida's version of the SAVE Act, my understanding is it doesn't go into effect until the start of 2027. Is that something you would have hoped would have gone into effect before the midterms? Is that
Yes, but I think that they ran into the issue that we're in the election year now. It would have thrown a wrench into how some of the procedures are. We've done very well in election, right? And so I think their view is Florida's the best in election integrity as it is. This makes us better, but let's just ride this one out, and then everyone will have adequate time to put these changes into effect. I think that was what their thinking was, and that's fine. We'll do it. I didn't really necessarily have strong feelings about that. I understand why they did what they did. Some of this stuff maybe could have been done this year, but it's fine, and it'll be beneficial for the people of Florida. But you can bet that when we have the election in November, you can sit down at 8 o'clock at night when the Panhandle closes, and you are going to see those results very quickly. And it ain't going to take weeks. Maybe if it's a one vote race, and people like we had with Paul Renner back in the day, maybe you litigate. Sometimes it can be very close, but you're going to have transparent results. We're going to know, and everyone can go about their life knowing that the election was done with transparency, efficiency, and integrity, and that's for sure. But I also think this SAVE Act is a positive step, and I think that they should do it at the federal level. I mean, some people are like, thanks for doing this, and they were happy to see the legislature doing it, but like, honestly, Florida, you can even need this as much as they need it in Illinois and in California and in all these other places. So we'll see if they end up getting anything done in Washington. Yep.
We basically got 3 special sessions. They're calling the budget session the special session. Districting, property tax, budget. You mentioned these 2 issues, the vaccine requirements, well, the AI Bill of Rights. Obviously, those were top priorities of yours. Do you envision a scenario where we see those issues added to the special session call?
Would you like me to include medical freedom in one of these? We'll see what happens. There's ways, there's more than one way to skin the cat on some of this stuff. I'm committed to seeing the policies ultimately prevail, and we'll look to see what options that we have. I don't really know. Look, I think on the AI Bill of Rights, I think it was a choice not to engage in that by the House, and they can explain why. On the medical freedom, they have engaged on that, and they've actually been very good on it. The individual members in the House have been very good on it. And the Senate was a huge lift. I mean, that was a really tough lift. I didn't know, I remember you guys talking with some of the senators, you're like, we're getting nowhere with some of them. And it's true, we have some that are just not on board with this, I get it. But there's enough to get it done. And so they did. And so, I really believe, I think once it passed the Senate, I think everyone felt it was going to end up passing. I don't know why the House, didn't put it in the end zone, given that they had already passed it. But the reality is there was a lot of great work done this session. The Senate's on the board on this, and we know that there's a product that can work there. And we hadn't had a product that could get through the Senate until this year. And again, I think Ben Albritton did a really good job. I mean, he wanted to get it done. He had to manage different factions. Not easy, especially on this issue. The whole reason mRNA mandate ban was not permanent was because, even when people were having the most outcry during COVID, they wanted to make it temporary in the Florida Senate, some of the senators. So it's temporary, right? Well, we want it permanent. We want all this other stuff. So, but I do think there's going to be opportunities one way or another. All right, guys, everyone enjoy TPC. God bless you. We'll see you.